Thomas Donchez, an alumnus, asked to address the public of moving forward together and healing. Mr. Donchez.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to comment today. I am one of the many men of the grand experiment. It's been 16 months, and we are no farther ahead today than we were the night you fired Joe Paterno. The students and alumni of this great university have fractured from the Board of Trustees along the questions of fairness, truth, and trust. In your first actions, you chose to make this about Joe and the other high-ranking employees. You chose from the beginning to think the worst of them, that they somehow failed, and they should be summarily dismissed without ever talking to them. You then commissioned and accepted free, and accepted the undeserved punishment of the NCAA, who referenced your acceptance of free. You have asked all of us to move forward as if the questions of fairness and truth have been settled. Obviously, nothing has been settled. I want to share with you a part of a poem by a woman named Ella Wilcox called Settle the Question Right. In part, she said, "Let those who have failed take courage, though the enemy seems to have won. If they are in the wrong, though their ranks are strong, the battle is not yet done. For as sure as the morning follows the darkest hours of night, no question is ever settled until it is settled right." I'm here to tell you something you already know, that growing numbers of alumni of this great university, growing numbers of the informed public, and men of the grand experiment will not move forward just because Free says this is how it was. He got much wrong. No question is ever settled until it's settled right. The intelligence and energy of your alumni are finding the truth, and this process will settle these questions right. It is being done by others, not by you, who are charged with the care of our university. Will this be your legacy?
1 minute.
It doesn't have to end this way. Attorney General Thornburg, Jim Clemente, and Dr. Fred Berlin have given us all the opportunity to settle this right. I urge you to read their reports and report back to your alumni. Tell us what you would have done differently with this information. Then do things differently. Our lives will be measured by our courage, the courage to apologize and seek forgiveness when we have failed others. This is not an easy thing to do, but in the end becomes the definition of our character. As Martin Luther King said, it's always the right time to do the right thing. I urge you to settle this right. If you do, it will start the process of truly beginning to heal and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donchez. Our next speaker, Mickey Schuler, also an alumnus, has asked to address the culture of Penn State. Mr. Schuler.
As a member of the Penn State family, I thank you for this opportunity to address the board today. I've always been proud to belong to such an outstanding group of people. But like many Penn Staters today, I am trying to sort out the events that have recently impacted our great university, and even though I know we are who we are, I'm worried that the board has forgotten. I'm concerned with the direction the university leadership is taking in an effort to redefine and change the perceptions of the culture at Penn State due to the Free Report and the NCAA sanctions. I feel Penn State's interests are being placed second to politically correct corporate interest or hidden agendas, something I believe has happened over the past 16 months. I'm offended by this for several reasons. One of them being because the board paid and accepted the incomplete Free Report as truth. This report not only alleges a cover-up by the university officials who dedicated their lives to Penn State, but it also constructed a motive for it by creating a false image it called our cultural reverence for football. As a result, the door opened for the unprecedented and inappropriate sanctions the NCAA placed on Penn State. The result of these sanctions are a tremendous disservice to all students, athletes, alumni, and Pennsylvanians who are being held accountable for something they didn't do. And long-term effects from these sanctions have the power to forever change the true nature of Penn State. And my concern is why our leadership chose not to defend this great university. Addressing and implementing recommendations from the free report regarding the areas that need improvement is one thing, but accepting the NCAA sanctions to save public face so we can quickly distance ourselves from this situation helps no one. We must remember that Penn State is an institution that is not greater than the people that comprise it, and we don't deserve this injustice. The culture of Penn State that I know would lead by example.
1 minute.
Stand up to the NCAA and ask for these sanctions to be removed because of the incomplete investigation by the Free Group and in light of the new conclusions based on the Paterno report. We have a national platform to show who we are, people of integrity, character, and honor. We are people who conduct ourselves in a manner that improves the lives of those around us through Thon, Uplifting Athletes, Proud PSU for Rain, One Heart, and many other organizations. And most importantly, we have a moral compass that seeks the truth no matter where it leads. Yes, these are things I learned from one great man of our generation, Joe Paterno. In conclusion, we ask you to consider the following. Read the report commissioned by the Paternos and use it to compare to the Free report to gain better perspective on this matter. Critically analyze the Free report and its conclusions. Just because you commissioned it and paid for it doesn't mean it is accurate or complete.
Thank you.
Fight the inappropriate NCAA sanctions. By accepting these sanctions, we have appropriated more power to this self-serving organization than it deserves. And last, demonstrate a strong leadership so that we so deserve. And last, demonstrate the strong leadership that we so desperately need to correct these mistakes. If you address these concerns, you will have my full support and the appreciation of a great university. Please fight for our honor and our good reputation that has always characterized Penn State. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mark Battaglia, an alumnus who is asked to address the actions of the board. Mr. Battaglia.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to address the board today. My name is Mark Battaglia, and I was fortunate enough to be on the 1982 National Championship team. Sadly, to date, there's only one man who has admitted that, with the benefit of hindsight, that he wished he would have done more. You see, Joe Paterno held us to a higher standard as players, in the classroom, in our lives, on the football field. And we're here today to hold you, the board, to a higher standard. And more specifically, members of the board who have already been held to a higher standard because they played for Joe Paterno, or they had brothers and nephews that played for Joe Paterno. They knew Joe Paterno like we knew Joe Paterno. They were in the huddle with him. When the game's on the line, they looked in his eyes. They saw the man. They knew the man. And yet, they wouldn't take his call. They wouldn't make a call. They sat around silently. Worse yet, maybe they led the effort to fire Joe. Why? Was it personal? Personal disappointment? Did they let a personal issue lead to potentially a $100 million debacle? You know, Joe always said, you're never as good as you think you are when you win, and you're never as bad as you think you are when you lose. The good news here, we're losing. We didn't lose. We are losing badly. We need to change the strategy. And we need the leadership from those very people that played for Joe to lead us out of this thing by changing. You've painted yourself in the corner with this free report. I'm sorry, Mr. Frazier. And this move on thing, it's not happening. The alumni are not buying it. So Joe always said, you have to believe deeply in your heart that you're destined to do great things. You guys can do that. There's still time. And there's 500,000 alumni out there that are hoping and praying that you accept the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Battaglia. Our next speaker, Philip Laporta, an alumnus, indicated he wished to encourage the board to act with honest and integrity to take our university to new heights. Mr. Laporta.
Choices in life must take into consideration the moral aspect of the decision process. What will our decision do to the lives of people, and what will our decision affect their lives? The decision process is not about dollars and cents. It cannot outweigh any moral obligation. Coach Paterno told us, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. He was saying the aspect of your moral responsibility far outweighs wins, losses, or financial gain. The biblical standard that people are to follow is, this is what is good, to act justly or with sound judgment, to love mercy or literally to embrace kindness, and to walk humbly. It is a path of lowly humiliation, the exact opposite of pride. It is a path where you think of others before yourself. Your decisions since November 2011 have wreaked havoc and brought disparagement upon Coach Paterno, the Paterno family, the football program, the football coaches, the university, and the alumni. As leaders of Penn State, you have the obligation to set a moral standard that is exhibited in sound judgment, kindness, and humility. It is evident by the things that you have said and the things that you have failed to say regarding the Free Report. Your moral failure is cataclysmic. Your failure in leadership, inexcusable. The expedient rush to judgment to satisfy the 24-hour news cycle was completely contrary to the founding principles of Penn State over 150 years ago. The broad mission of teaching, research, the pursuit of knowledge, and the advancement of the masses so championed by Coach Paterno. If you genuinely want to see the process of healing take place at this university, you must first walk a path of humility and ask people for forgiveness with all kindness. And second, realize that the majority of Penn Staters hold you accountable, and nothing short of the majority of you stepping down will be able to apply the healing salve to a deep wound. To show you the depth of your moral failure, I point you to a quote from a recent Center Daily Times article by one of you regarding Coach Paterno. Quote, "We retired him 3 weeks early." Statements such as this only break a wound that is starting to heal wide open again. In closing, Coach Paterno was fired for a failure of leadership. If that's an offense worth firing a man who led this university morally, academically, in giving, and in the field of athletics with the men of the grand experiment for over 50 years, where does that leave you in your failure of leadership? And oh, by the way, if there's a black hole, we better get into it, and we better find the rat that's down the hole. Because there is nothing else that we need to do than get to the bottom of this and be open and transparent. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't be a university. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Laporta. Our next speaker is Daniel Wallace, also an alum, has asked to speak to the board structure and Auditor General recommendations. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. I appreciate your service, and I'm proud to be able to come up here and speak with you. I'm a proud graduate in 1975 and one of the men of the grand experiment, and I'm a supporter of the entire university's mission of academics, research, and service. My topic is board structure, and earlier today I heard the conversations about the Auditor General's recommendations, and I encourage you to implement those board structures as soon as possible. The removal of the university president as a voting member, the governor, make the governor a non-voting member, and reduce the size of the board and its voting members. In addition, I suggest that there be more trustees elected from the alumni base rather than being appointed by the governor in its various constituencies. The General Assembly is considering adopting these recommendations, but I urge you to implement them now. I also encourage the board to include more time for public discourse and opportunities for the alumni, general public, and to communicate and interact with the board. For example, consider our testimony today. We had requested a reservation of time last week. We were notified of our acceptance yesterday, and we get a short 3 minutes to address you today. I think there should be more. The size of the board is too large and cumbersome and unresponsive. I believe this factor led to the mismanagement of the actions taken in November of 2011 regarding the dismissal of Joe Paterno and Graham Spanier. A smaller, more cohesive, more communicative board would have never voted the horrific decisions that were made that day. I thank you for your time, and I hope and pray for continued great accomplishments of our world-class university. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.